Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
Ready? Okay. Well, thanks again for joining today. This is becoming a regular event, but hopefully it's of value to you. As I have done before, I want to say that Dr. Harrist is here, and I want to begin today's press conference with some statistics on COVID-19. 1,404 lab-confirmed positives, 336 probable cases, 1,291 recoveries, leaving us active cases around 449. There have been 21 deaths, and in the last 24 hours we just added that last one. We were at 20, and now we're at 21. Additionally, there are 26 lab-confirmed cases today. Our numbers keep rising, and I think that's of concern. Many of our counties are reporting increases in new cases, and we have hundreds of people under quarantine orders here in Laramie County. Today, I participated in the change of command at F.E. Warren, and had the opportunity to talk about our readiness posture and how important it is to make sure that our airmen are safe, that the missileers are able to do their job, and that they aren't compromised. If we were to, in effect, put a large number with the amount of infection rate that this has, to put a large number of our missileers at risk to catching COVID, the challenge there would be immense, and our ability to meet the ever-increasing challenges we see from Russia and China would be compromised. So it is important that we wear masks, that we take care when we're out to social distance, all the things that we've been talking about. Had not really thought about it in terms of our national security at a time when the world is so volatile, but that really struck home to me. We're seeing around the state, places like Bighorn County, where daycares are having to close because of COVID, and that then has the knock-on effects of parents not being able to go to work, having to stay home, grandparents being put in a position of being compromised. And I think people in Wyoming understand that it's important that we make every attempt to make sure that we wear a mask if we can, social distance as much as we can, make sure we use good hygiene, to protect our national security, and to protect our business viability. Over the weekend, of course, there were large numbers of visitors and gatherings, and it was great to see people out and about, understanding the great outdoors that Wyoming has to offer. I was up in the Bighorns, my home area, and I think we had campers scattered all over the mountain. One of the local stores was telling me they thought they had somewhere in the entire Bighorn forest, somewhere around 30,000 people that were taking advantage of being out in our great mountains. We also had the opportunity, when Jenny and I, to go to Du Bois, and I'm happy to say that people there mostly respectful of social distancing, and it was great to see us celebrate our national birthday. The science is clear. Wearing a face mask, face covering, when we can't social distance, will keep people, and especially our economy, healthy. And today, as I've mentioned, our national security complete. We don't want to see the progress that we've made unravel. We've seen that happen in other states. Wyoming people have a ability about them, a common sense nature. We don't need to make demands. We just ask, and people generally will comply. We want our businesses to remain open, and especially since one of the large parts of our economic three-legged stool is tourism, we want tourists to come here, feel safe, and understand that we expect them to exhibit the same responsibility and respect that we show them. Let me change to talk a little bit about our budget posture. Over the next few days, starting really tomorrow, I'll be visiting with my cabinet. They have submitted their 10% budget cuts, and predictably, there are some really tough things that we have to look at. Some of these things I'll mention now that are on the list. Funding for things like mental health, sex offender programs, children, elder care, industrial siting for DEQ, travel out of state for some of our agencies. These are some of the many very difficult choices that we'll have to make, and there will be reductions in force. None of that's good. It means the level of service that the state will be able to give its citizens will be reduced. But as governor, these are the choices that I have to make. I have no other alternatives, and we will work with our various agency heads to try to do a better job of delivering efficiently and properly the services that people in Wyoming want. But I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that there aren't going to be some reductions that are going to have to take place. I've also asked all of my agencies to identify an additional 20%, an all-in 20%, an additional 10%. And so you can see with the cuts that we've really talked about here, they're getting close to the bone. In some cases, we really are talking about the bone. Those are decisions I'll have to make over the next couple of days. That next round that we're identifying at this point will be even harder. They will talk about some really very precious programs and some very valuable people. I don't look forward to any of this, but these are the times that we live in, and these are the choices that I need to make. When I was at the Republican convention, I made the same case, and I pointed out that this election is essential to make sure that we have quality candidates who understand the challenges and the choices that we're going to have to make in Wyoming's case. the way we can move forward and the way we can emerge from this, as I know we can, successfully and stronger. Yesterday I talked to my good friend, Governor Brad Little of Idaho. Governor Little was sort of smug in that he has a budget surplus that he's delivering. He said, you know, what we did is we diversified our economy a few years ago, and now, with all the stuff that's going on, we are really seeing the benefits of that. Wyoming still has a posture really focused around minerals. And the challenge is going to be, how do we diversify away from that? But the people of Wyoming know this, and the people of Wyoming will make wise choices come this fall. And our session coming up in January will be one of the most important sessions that this state has ever seen. Changing the topic a little bit to some work that we did yesterday in the special session, which has been reported in the paper. This is a non-binding bid that we plan to submit today on a range of assets. Let me emphasize, a range of assets that are kind of collectively called Project Bison. Really refers to the Occidental land and mineral purchase. We took that action yesterday after hearing public testimony. Let me assure the people of Wyoming, this has not been a process that's been secretive or sly or sleight of hand. In fact, it's not even fully resolved at this point. So I want to make it clear kind of how the process has worked and where it is going next. After the legislature met and passed a bill which said, we want you to look at this, but here are a number of provisions, and here's how you're going to fund this, it became clear that that particular piece of legislation would actually not work because the capital construction bill that had the funding available to do the study did not pass. I vetoed that bill and made the promise that I would do what the legislature requested in analyzing the Occidental deal, in analyzing what it meant for the state of Wyoming, and that we would bring back a report to the people of Wyoming. We then engaged with Barclays Bank after talking with several other banks that were qualified to fully assess the range of assets and the potential that they had. We have received their report, and it is informing our, and let me make this absolutely clear, investment decision. So what we are looking at is whether the full asset picture that includes trona, natural gas, coal, other minerals, and land, whether putting that in our permanent mineral trust fund portfolio, money that can't be used to address budget shortfalls or payrolls or anything else, money that the people of Wyoming expect to get a return from, money that Treasurer Meyer and then prior to that myself have worked hard to make sure that Wyoming gets the best value for its buck. We looked at whether this asset conglomeration would be beneficial to our overall portfolio. And as I think you can probably imagine, there are a range of prices that happens. And we are very disciplined in making sure that this augments our investment returns, so that if we are ultimately a successful bidder, that the people of Wyoming will see that benefit in lowered taxes and in better returns off our investment portfolio. This is in no way an effort to try to build an operating company, and in no way an attempt to try to get into any of these industries. It is simply an asset purchase of a number of different asset classes. Yesterday we heard compelling testimony of concerns about concentration risk. Duly noted, it is true. There is a risk to the concentration that this particular purchase might present. We heard concerns about whether the state could manage it. We're taking those into consideration. We also had fairly compelling testimony about the investment opportunity under the circumstances. If our bid goes forward and is successful ultimately, it will have to come back to the State Loan and Investment Board for a further vote. Prior to that vote, as I said last week, there will be one additional statewide, probably Zoom enabled opportunity for the people of Wyoming from wherever to comment on that. And there will be an additional 3 public hearings, one in Carbon County, one in Sweetwater, and one in Uinta, where we will take additional testimony. And then there will be a public vote where the price will be revealed and a number of other things. And that will also be a public meeting that will allow for people to comment on this. So in the course of this interim time between the legislature and the last couple of days, we have been doing an intense amount of research just to understand what the opportunity is for Wyoming. I am extremely, as are the rest of the board members, thoughtful about whether this means that we will see a reduction in the investment returns. And I want to assure you, we won't proceed if we're going to see a significant reduction in investment returns. This is an investment, not a real estate, not a trona, not a coal, not an oil and gas play. This is an investment consideration and opportunity. And again, I want to say, whatever this investment takes, it comes from money that cannot be used. It is inviolate funds of the state. And so I wanted to make all those things clear. Lastly, I want to just give a little bit of a talk about sort of the economic opportunities we're seeing right now. Taxable sales, as well you can imagine, during the first quarter, which ended right at March, fell by 5.7% to a total of $4.2 billion. That's very low. It's also to be expected because the state and the national economy completely shut down towards the end of March. It is the first contraction in 3 years. I also want to say that the amount of mineral severance taxes generated was the lowest since 2016. 2016, you will remember, was the last time that all commodity prices collapsed. I do want to compliment our agency heads for their response to the budget reductions I have requested and their willingness to work through them. I want to especially thank the employees of the state of Wyoming who continue to have faith in our future and continue to want to do a good job. And so with that, I am ready to take some questions, and I thank you all for tuning in. And I'll look to see if we have some questions. Do we have a question?
Hi, Governor. This is Trevor Cordillo with Oil City News.
Yes. How are you?
Governor, some criticism has been kind of lobbied against leadership around the state lately regarding masks and social distancing, saying that city leaders, other state leaders, and including yourself have been seen in public without masks. Do you have any answer or any response to that criticism? Yeah,
thank you for that. You know, as much as I possibly can, I do try to wear a mask occasionally, and I know there's a picture somebody showed me on Facebook at the Republican convention. You sit down for your meal, somebody you know walks up, and I didn't put my mask on. You know, I think this is, the way I look at it, as much as I possibly can, I try to wear that mask. I'm very conscientious about it. But I also know that there are times when I haven't been able to get a mask on, or it seemed extremely awkward. I do try to keep social distancing. I would love to say my behavior has been perfect. I am human, but it's becoming increasingly important that we do this. People are kind of out making sure that that their civic leaders do the right thing at all times. I appreciate the criticism. I take it to heart. I will continue to try to do a better job every day of wearing a mask. And believe me, I do wear a mask quite often. Thank you. Another question? Matt, have you got one?
Max Cotton with Wyoming News Now. Real quickly, President Trump yesterday tweeted all schools must open in the fall, and then said he would persuade the governors to have completely in-class learning. Obviously, the plan that Superintendent Balo laid out has calls for that, but also calls for other models depending on the situation on the ground in each county. Is that plan going to change at all because of what the president said, or?
What I would answer to that, Matt, good question. Wyoming is a state which values local control. We want to make sure that we have the flexibility that allows school districts, who after all know best. We can't expect Washington to know what's best for us on every particular event or eventuality. So what we've tried to do is lay out a plan which envisions kids going back to school fully, which is kind of what the Trump administration is asking us to do, but provides for the opportunity that kids can still learn at the same rate, even if they, for some reason, aren't able to be in the classroom. That means we're going to expand our broadband. We've just talked about pushing out more broadband coverage around the state. It means that we're going to make sure school children have access to more equipment. It is, I think, essential that we try to have our kids back in school as much as possible, but I don't want to endanger anybody, and I want to give our local school districts the tools they need to do the right thing for the people that elected them. Thank you.
Governor Gordon, it's Barbara Ann from the Bighorn County newspapers.
Hi, Barbara Ann, and I believe I need to get a video to you, and Michael's standing here, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Sure, my question would be that since the funding in the state is going to be cut for mental health, is there any way that the CARES money can be used to help with those issues that have risen because of the COVID-19?
Thank you, Barbara Ann, for that question. Yes, we're looking for every way that we can extend these services and be able to make sure that we don't leave gaps as much as we possibly can. The thing I want to make sure of is that we don't overpromise. CARES funding, I think, probably finds its way to help buttress those services, and that's very helpful. But of course, CARES Act funding runs out on December 31st, and we're really talking about the biennium budget. So right from the top to the bottom, whether it be in corrections, whether it be in the Department of Health, whether it be Department of Family Services, Workforce Services, what have you, we've been really trying to rethink the model of how we get the right kinds of services to people. And that's going to be an ongoing process, and one that we hope to engage the legislature in. Thanks.
Hi, Governor Gordon. This is Seth of the Star Tribune. This question is for Dr. Harris.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Harris. So I had a couple of questions about hospitalizations. First, we've seen a bit of an uptick over the past few days. Numbers are still relatively small, of course, but it is going up. Is that something you anticipate continuing to climb in the coming couple of weeks?
Yeah, thanks, Seth. Just as we've said really since the pandemic started, that we do expect to continue to see cases. Unfortunately, that does mean that we will continue likely to see hospitalizations and deaths. The circulation of the virus among less vulnerable age groups that we are seeing now is a possible factor as far as how many hospitalizations and deaths we might see. But we certainly can't dismiss our new cases as somehow less dangerous or less important than others. The fact does remain that anyone is at risk for serious illness, and anyone can pass along the virus to somebody who is especially vulnerable. We are seeing, as has been reported widely, some really tough healthcare situations in other states like Arizona and Texas. And so we're really asking people to help us prevent that from happening here. So our core recommendations remain the same, and they remain more important than ever to stay home when you're sick unless you need medical attention, keep your distance from other people, and wear face coverings whenever physical distancing isn't practical.
Thanks. Sort of a similar question. When Utah County had it, about a month ago, Kim Prophet at the health department there said she was seeing, somewhat more severe symptoms than when they had their initial kind of cluster of cases. Is that something you're seeing statewide, or is it sort of similar in terms of the symptoms that we saw in the first few weeks?
Thanks. That's an interesting question. It's not something that we've noticed as a pattern statewide. And when we look at severity of illness, we do look at hospitalization and deaths. Those are really our good measures for that. And so, we're posting those rates on our website. You can see that in general, present hospitalization has tended to decrease over the course of the outbreak, likely because with increased testing, we're able to detect more of the less, people with less severe symptoms or even asymptomatic people. And so not something I can say we're seeing as a pattern statewide, but as always, this is a new virus. We're learning more about it all of the time, and something we'll keep an eye on, as well as nationally, epidemiology-wise, they will too.
Great. Thanks so much.
Hi, Governor. Jim O'Reilly, Big Radio.
Yes, hi, Jim.
A couple questions about the possible land purchase deal. Thanks for laying out the process. Can you attach a timeline to that process? For instance, when the slip board might learn if the bid was successful. Also, are there other bidders at the table, and do we know who they are? When would those public meetings be held? And if you go through all of the entire process, and this is a successful bidder, and the state proceeds with the land purchase, becomes the owner of the land, one of the concerns at the county level is that they would lose tax revenues from those lands if they became state lands. Can you address that question as well?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. As far as timeline, it's a little bit unclear. We'll submit a bid in a few days. We would anticipate having a response. That would probably lead to a significant amount of due diligence on our part. We've been doing a lot of diligence, but there's still more to be done. We anticipated, set up yesterday, that there would be a kind of an overview, fairly detailed, but overview that state lands would produce probably in the next few weeks, that would inform public about really what it is. I think the media has done a great job of sort of saying where these assets are and what they are. But this will be kind of in a document form that allows for easy understanding of exactly what it is we're looking at. And then, as I say, we anticipate having those public meetings. It has to occur in relatively short order over a few weeks, and that timeline will make available really just as quick as we can. I don't want to. I kind of got myself into promising things in Carbon, Sweetwater, and Uinta, thinking of, before COVID. And so I want to make sure people understand we're going to do our best to make sure that there's ways to be able to testify either via Zoom or something else. So it's going to take a little bit to find the right venue for that to happen. But as I do say, we'll have a statewide opportunity to speak to it as well. And then the state, if all of that goes well, the state would then have a purchase and sale agreement that would happen after the fact, should that still be on the table, and that would then occasion a bit more due diligence until we finally arrived at closing, which would be sometime later in the year. As to where our valuations lie, the returns we anticipate off these assets over time, fully baked into that analysis is what it takes to recover the sales tax, or not sales tax, but the property and ad valorem taxes that potentially would be lost. So our return estimates really, consider consider all the tax revenues and management costs that are really associated with that. I think Representative Stith from Rock Springs yesterday brought up a particularly good point, and it's always one of the challenges in a political system. What would the political risks be to to the state perhaps saying we'll take a lower rate on grazing, say, or we'll take a lower rate on the sale of. He pointed out a piece of the property that lies in Rock Springs proper. These are all concerns that we've got to take into consideration. We don't really know who the other people who put in bids were. I guess that could be revealed to us even in a few days. We've heard that there may be a Canadian pension fund that might be looking at it. We've heard people have speculated that Michael Bloomberg. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's a whole host of rumors out there about who might have been bidding on it, but we just don't know, and so that's I guess. I hope that answers all your questions.
It does. I think you answered as far as the property taxes for the state. If the state were to own the land, that would be lost to counties, that asset value.
Right. That's what was factored into it. Federally, it's called a payment in lieu of taxes. Would be a similar feature. Of course, that would be up a little bit to the legislature, but and I, constantly have kept legislative leadership on both sides of the aisle updated on where we stand with our analysis. And so, I guess people would go into this fully informed. The idea we have is that the investment returns would cover all of those taxes and add substantially to the returns on the portfolio. And I will mention too, Jim, just because I think there's been a wide range of comments on this, both good and bad. And one of them is brought by a neighbor of mine up in Mayoworth, who pointed out that the state really it would be nice if the state had a no net gain on the land that it owns. So there's a lot of there's just a lot of things to be thinking about.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor Gordon, this is Tom Hallberg from the Jacksonville News and Guide. I think I have a question that's probably for Dr. Harris.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Teton County has asked for a stricter variance in regards to a mask order, and one of our elected bodies passed a resolution supporting it, and the other has so far not taken a vote. And so I guess I'm wondering, looking at other counties wanted to ask for stricter variances to state health orders. how important are shows of political support from local elected officials in regards to your decision-making process, whether to approve those or not?
Thanks for that question. When we put out guidance to counties on, seeking either less restrictive or more restrictive county variances to the statewide orders, we did put a step in there that said, discussion with the local community. And so it's certainly something that we do take into account. My focus, of course, is public health, and that's what I need to focus on, is making sure that the actions are necessary and appropriate for the public health, that the outbreak metrics indicate that either a less restrictive or more restrictive variance is necessary, and so that is my primary focus. But certainly, support from the community, is likely to make it a more successful intervention, whatever the intervention is. So definitely a factor that we consider. Certainly the public health aspects, the outbreak metrics are the priority.
Great, thank you.
Another question?
Hi, Governor. This is Tom Coulter with the Tribune Eagle. I think I have a question for Dr. Harrist, actually.
Sure.
She's still there. Hi, Dr. Harrist. So I was just wondering regarding the Department of Corrections testing plan that got announced today. So I guess first just kind of expanding on that a little bit, but also I was specifically wondering, there was a release earlier this week talking about inmates coming back to Wyoming from out of state. And I guess I was wondering, A, if there's been any testing of them out of state before they came back, and also if there's any, any concerns, I guess, about mixing those populations now that they're back in the facilities.
Sure, thanks. So I just, want to start off by saying that, we have seen outbreaks in corrections facilities in other states that have been quite devastating. And the fact that we have not seen that here is really a testament to the precautions that the Department of Corrections, put in place early on in this pandemic. And so the urge or the impetus to test now is based on a lot of factors. Of course, increased availability of testing, the fact that we are seeing increasing in cases across the state, and just a more proactive way to be able to prevent cases and outbreaks in the facilities. The inmates that came in from out of state were tested. That was a collaboration between corrections and our public health laboratory, so that testing was done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Another question?
Hi, Governor. It's Jim O'Reilly again from Bigfoot Radio. I have a question for Dr. Harris.
Thanks.
Hi, Doctor. At the county level, we're hearing that there is a saliva test coming. Address that and what that will mean in terms of speeding up the lag time between the test and the result, and also how does it differ from the skin test that's happening now?
I'm sorry, I think you broke up a little bit in the first part. You said that there was more what coming?
That there may be a saliva test for the coronavirus coming in the next few weeks, and address how that may speed up the time between the test and the result, and also compare it to the accuracy of the test as to what is being used now for testing.
Sure, thanks. So the saliva test probably won't necessarily increase turnaround times, especially compared to our Wyoming public health lab, but it does, it provides us opportunities to do more surveillance testing. So to do more proactive surveillance testing, detecting cases earlier so we can implement control measures. We always want to be prepared. Our public health laboratory is now able to handle all symptomatic patients, close contacts, anyone involved in an epidemiologic investigation. But knowing where we were in testing at the beginning of the pandemic, want to make sure we always have plans for an increase in demand for testing, or again, problems with supply. Diversifying and increasing our ability to test is very important. But at this time, the plan for these saliva tests is to use them to increase the surveillance testing that we're able to do. It is a saliva test that is sent off to a laboratory in another other state, and they're run, they're saying that they can turn those around within 24 hours of receipt. So the time frame should be very similar to what we're seeing from our public health laboratory. In terms of the accuracy, certainly the laboratory has done studies on this test, expected to have very good performance characteristics. Just like with any test, there's not only the test characteristics, but also making sure that sample collection and transport are good. So we do expect this test to be able to perform well.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question, please? Just looking at the testing number, the return of positive tests, you see that fluctuation on the bar graph on the Wyoming Department of Health website. Does that correlate to the number of tests that are being performed? Are there more tests being performed on some days than other days? Or is that an indication of the spread of the virus on certain days of the week? I mean, is there a correlation at all between the number of positive returned lab cases versus the number of tests that are performed?
Yeah, I think it's probably more of an indication on just the number of tests being performed and likely some variability on the weekends where many outpatient clinics just aren't open and aren't performing testing. So I don't think there's any correlation between, positive results and the day of the week. I think it's probably just more of a factor of how weekends influence the number of tests being done.
Drop off there over the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th compared to earlier in the month, or at the end of June, rather.
The drop off at like the 3rd, 4th, 5th in July?
I was just looking at the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. There's a big drop off in the number of cases.
Yeah.
That's why I was wondering if that was a result of just few tests were being performed over that period of time.
Sure. Yeah. So certainly, the sort of numbers of cases detected per day leveling off over the past couple of days, I'm hoping is a sign that's actually happening. But I agree with you. We have to keep in mind that it was a holiday weekend, potentially fewer people getting tested on those days. So I think the upcoming days will be very informative as to whether we can trust that trend.
Is that a number that can be added to the website? How many tests are being performed per day? So we can track the percent of cases on a more closely with what's actually happening with testing.
Sure. So those are reported. The number of cases per day are reported on our website. We show both the number of cases performed by our public health laboratory as well as tests performed by commercial and reference laboratories and tests performed by hospitals and show the percentage of those that are positive. There could be some lag in those numbers, especially from the commercial laboratories where they may take a couple more days to report results to us. So we do show those numbers, just there may be a couple days lag, especially for the commercial tests.
All right, thank you.
So a couple more questions. Is that it? Well, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope that people had a good and safe 4th of July holiday. We're now into the meat of the summer, and I'm hopeful that people will begin to be more careful as they gather, as I need to as well, and make sure that we do the things that we know are going to be effective. This is important for us to be able to get our schools open. It's important for us to keep our daycare open. It's important for those parents that need to count on being able to go to work and have daycare. It's important, as I said, to our businesses. We're starting to see businesses close because their workforce is sick. So far, in Wyoming, we've been relatively fortunate. Our largest industries, whether it be Dyno Nobel or a coal mine or anything to do with timber, those have been largely relatively small, the outbreaks that they've seen, and they've been manageable. But clearly, as we saw in a couple of cases where suddenly you have huge spikes showing up, it can take your workforce out. So that's problematic for those businesses. But when you think about our national readiness posture for defense and the fact that this puts things at risk in the country, that's also a challenge. But I want to thank you. I want to end this by saying thank you, Wyoming, for taking care, for doing your best, for caring about your neighbor. That's why we love this state. That's why so many people are looking to our state. Perhaps it's the reason why our real estate is doing really well right now. So God bless you. God bless Wyoming. God bless the United States of America. Thanks.